Bud Anderson is famous for downing 7 Bf-109s and 9 Focke-Wulf 190s while flying a P-51 Mustang. Did you know he also downed a Heinkel 111, flew combat missions in the Vietnam War, and flew as a test pilot? Join us in this episode as this triple ace reveals his incredible career.
In my youth, when I did not enjoy aviation, I was fascinated by it, and then it became a passion. My dad took me on a plane ride, an old biplane. It was down near Sacramento, and we flew up over the farm, banked around, and came back. It really thrilled me. And then we had a plane crash between Loomis and Newcastle. A Boeing 3-engine biplane. Nobody got killed. He kind of set it down in the woods, and it crashed into the side of a hill. And it was buddy Jack Stacker from Loomis. He and I examined that airplane from top to bottom in the crash site. Actually took home a couple of souvenirs. And although it was tragic, it was not, to us, it was just interesting. It was something about aviation. And that's pretty much my youthful inspirations. Well, my first flight training was in a Piper Cub, and I got a private pilot's license at the age of 19. Waiting to join the service, I had to be 20 years old, have 2 years of college, physically fit and unmarried. I took a technical course that qualified me to be an aircraft mechanic, and that was my backup plan. I'd go in the service and work on airplanes. The Sacramento Air Depot, later McClellan Air Force Base, hiring anybody that could turn a wrench while they were building up for the war. I can remember we were working 24/7, and I had just gotten back on a day shift from the whole summer on the graveyard shift. The foreman came to see us later in the day. Go home right now and come back at midnight on the graveyard shift. The Japanese have just attacked us at Pearl Harbor. Oh my goodness, Pearl Harbor. I didn't even know where it was, but I knew the impact of it. And then we're gonna end up getting in a war somehow. We did declare war on Japan and Germany at the same time. So the next month I turned 20, went into the service, the Army Aviation Cadet Program, to be a pilot. My first quick boot camp at Higley Field, which was later Williams Air Force Base. Not even 30 days, and then they shipped me off to primary flight school. And that was not a military base either. It was a Ryan School of Aeronautics. I went to primary school, flew the PT 2022. That lasted for 3 months. And then we went to Bakersfield at Minter Army Airfield. There we flew the BT-13. When we finished there, we went to Luke Army Airfield. And there we had our advanced training, and we got our wings. And we had about 3 months, and we were flying the North American AT-6. And that was really flying. That had the horsepower, and you felt like you got a hold of a real airplane. BT-13 was not bad, but still had a fixed gear and not a warplane. The T-6, you felt like you were flying a warplane. And we graduated there 29 September and went off to our first duty in the U.S. Air Force, Hamilton Field, with duty at the Oakland Municipal Airport. And we were in a squadron that was called replacement training pilots. We would fly there for about 3 months and then go off to fight the war somewhere in the world. Our time came to go. They said, oh no, you guys are going to Tonopah, Nevada and join a brand new fighter group that's training for the war. We'll be the first assignees. I didn't realize the importance of that, but it was delaying us getting into the war. So we flew for about another 3 months as the 357th Fighter Group, mostly around here in California, Orville. It was a frontline fighter. It wasn't tremendously fast, and it pretty well pooped out about 15,000 feet. It was fighting the war in North Africa and South Pacific. So that's where we thought we would go. It was an innovative airplane, had a tricycle landing gear, which we always had a tail dragger up to that point. It had an engine that was mounted in the mid of the airplane, right behind the pilot. It had a long shaft under the floor, out to the nose, to the bottom of a planetary gear that drove the prop, and that left a big hole in the bottom of the engine. So it could have a 37 millimeter cannon or a 20 millimeter. Plus it had machine guns in the wing and could drop bombs and things like that. The cockpit was close and had automobile type doors and a roll-up window just like a car. It was fun to fly as far as I was concerned, but it did have some bad stall characteristics because the FCG of the airplane was more toward the rear. It was exciting now to fire guns and aerial gunnery. We'd done a little bit in AT-6, but now this is a frontline fighter we're training in. I enjoyed it, but we had a lot of casualties. The government was going to train 225,000 pilots as soon as possible, and don't let safety get in the way of progress. It's kind of a sad statistic of World War II. We killed more pilots in training than we did in combat. About November of '43, we got on a troop train, went to New York, and we went on the Queen Elizabeth to England. And somewhere in there we were told, hey, you guys are getting the P-51 B model with the Merlin engine. And we said, oh, wow. We'd never seen or flew a P-51. Well, that's the story how we got to England. The Army Air Corps had a halt in the bombing. They were losing too many bombers, and they weren't doing a good job. They weren't killing the Luftwaffe, and they had to defeat the Luftwaffe before the invasion could go. The 8th Air Force was in charge of that. They were not doing a good job, too many losses. So they had this halt, and they decided, well, they thought they could do it without fighter escort. We do need fighter escort. The 8th Air Force there demanded that they get the P-51 reassigned from the 9th to the 8th Air Force. And we didn't even have handbook on the Mustang. So we just got in it and flew it. And then that guy checked the next guy out. I got to go to the Royal Air Force Central Aerial Gunnery School. I got 35 hours. The colonel says, take a Mustang with you and fly it in the course rather than a Spitfire. And so I got 35 hours in the airplane before I got in combat. I was pretty lucky. We instantly knew we had a much better airplane, so we didn't bitch about anything about the training or the checks out or I think we just did it. And later we got handbooks and stuff like that. And they told us how to fly close, stay with the bombers, stay close. They wanted to see us. And when the enemy comes in, you drive them away. But at 18,000 feet, if you haven't done your job, you break it off, go back up, and escort closely. We felt like we were not participating as best as we could, and kind of flying with one hand tied behind your back. Doolittle changed all this. No more 18,000 feet. So when you engaged the enemy, you took them to the ground and killed them. And we were so overjoyed. All the fighter pilots were happy because we're now participating in the fighting. And we did break the back of the Luftwaffe by June 6, 1944. I primarily flew with combat unit in fighter units from the 357th as a pilot, operations officer, and we were in a dogfight deep in Germany, really deep, way back. We were going to Poland. Somewhere during that dogfight, I saw a shadow on the ground, and it was going back east. And I said, what the hell was that? You know, but I'm dogfighting. But it's something that you really need in a dogfight is situational awareness, what's going around in the total picture. You're really concentrated on one airplane, but you need to know where the other ones are and listening on the radio. So when we polished these guys off, I said, hey guys, I thought, I've seen something. Did you see anything on the ground? No. I said, well, come on. And so I got them in spread formation and went down to about 5,000 feet and go east along a railroad track. And sure enough, I caught up with him, and I saw the shadow again before I could see the airplane. And it was well camouflaged, dark green. And it was, if it had been a hazy day, no shadow, I never would have seen it. Really, really effective. So we pull up alongside there, and I said, oh my God, here's another victory, easy, shoot with fish in a barrel. And then I thought a little bit, these guys don't get to shoot very much when they're with me. and so I says, hey guys, get the practice gunnery formation. And they damn near collided getting into left echelon because they knew they're going to get to shoot. And so everybody made one pass, and finally the guy crash landed burning. He was burning and smoking. And funny thing happened. Two guys got out of it. And the one pilot was just standing out in front looking up at us. And we were up there going around like busy bees or hornets or something. The other guy took off running. And he had bellied in a big open meadow, it was huge. And there was no place to run, let alone crash it or land an airplane. Well, he did land it, but then he hit something, and it collapsed the gear and tore the wing off and spun around, and he was burning there on the ground. The other guy took off running. Jesus, you dumbass. We could stamp you just, so I'm going to give him a thrill. So I went down and just buzzed right over the top of him as low as I could get. And then we went on home. Got a couple more victories before I finished my second tour down there. I went to Korea right after the war and flew F-86s with one experienced captain and one from the training command. All the rest were second lieutenants on their first duty assignment to Korea. And then I went back to flight testing, Edwards Air Force Base. After several years of doing that, I was assigned Kanao first and became Director of Operations, Vice Commander, and then finally Commander of a 18th Wing F-105s. And I thought, surely I'll go to Vietnam with the 105. There I got to fly the F-105 for real as Wing Commander. I did that as a Wing Commander of 3 squadrons of Strike Thuds and a squadron of Wild Weasels, B-66 Recce Squadron in our wing. And then I got checked out in the 105. And I got over there, and I only flew about 25 or 30 missions. They were all bombing missions in North Vietnam. The Ho Chi Minh Trail with supplies coming down the Mekong River. For sure, that's all the missions were that kind. Full bomb load, full machine guns, don't bring any home. By the time I got there, we had decided that we weren't going north again. And now they said we're closing. And that was a weird thing. They said, the State Department says you can't close. The Air Force says we're closing it. When I went home from there, I didn't have a year to go, less than a year. They put out a rule, you can go anywhere you want and serve that out. So I kind of thought I'd take McClellan, the place where I was a junior aircraft mechanic, McClellan Air Force Base, which was close to home. Yeah, I had a civilian commander and a bird colonel running the depot, and military and civilians all the way down. I said, whatever. He gave me the biggest job, one of the biggest jobs there, 17,000 civilians that did the depot work. And I had a couple of civilians to help me in the front office. So that was kind of interesting. I'd never been in a depot before. So I served that out and retired there. By this time I had been in right field in flight test for a good long tour, and Edwards Air Force Base for a good long tour. And by the time I retired, I bought an airplane, which I'd never done before, a Piper Warrior. Started flying that. I had gotten a flight instructor rating and a recheck out. So I got a lot of civilian flying. I didn't do a lot of instruction, but flew a lot because I owned the airplane. Realistically speaking, right now, I definitely had flown over 100 different kind of airplanes. But depending on how you classify different, probably 150, something like that. Somewhere between 100 and 150 different kinds of airplanes.
After retiring from active duty as a full colonel in 1972, Anderson worked at the F-15 test facility at Edwards Air Force Base. He was inducted into the National Aviation Hall of Fame in 2008, and on December 2, 2022, he was promoted to the honorary rank of Brigadier General. Please remember to like and subscribe, and check out our other episodes.